Welcome back to KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us. It's now time for deliberations right here in studio. Allow me to acknowledge the legislator who's already in studio. The Kimilili Member of Parliament, Didmas Baraza, has already joined us. Mheshimiwa, thank you so much for your time. Karibu sana to our studios.
Thank you very much.
Equally, we're expecting the Senator for Makueni County, Dan Manzo, and we'll rope him into the deliberations right here once he arrives. But let's start with the very latest in terms of the issues we want to canvass. We'll be taking a look at the uproar around the advices to President William Ruto, and they are definitely causing a stir online because, as the Standard boldly highlighted today, at the level of cabinet secretaries, while others are serving at the level of principal secretaries, gobbling up more than 1 billion shillings to run their offices annually. The recent addition of Professor Makau Mutua, who's the ODM leader Raila Odinga's close ally, and Jaoko Oburu, the son of Siaya Senator Oburu Odinga, has clogged an already bloated government. Now, questions have arisen over the increasing number of President William Ruto's advisors at State House, with the number doubling despite the heads of state promising to reduce it by half. We just want to take a look at the president's promise, which was given last year on July 5th, 2024, right after the Gen Z protest, where he promised to reduce the cost of running government by slashing the number of advisors by half. Let's listen in to what President William Ruto had to say last year on July 5th.
Number of advisors in government shall be reduced by 50% within the public service with immediate effect. Budget lines providing for the operations of the office of the First Lady, the spouse of the Deputy President, and the Prime Cabinet Secretary will be removed. Similarly, the budget provisions for confidential budgets in various executive offices, including my own office, have been removed, and the budget for renovations across government reduced by 50%.
Okay, so he promised to cut his advisors by half, equally slash the budget for renovations by 50%. So let's begin on that issue of advisors, Didmas, because there are two schools of thoughts out there. There's some who argue that this is an insatiable appetite by government to increase government expenditure, because we've equally seen PSs increased from, I think, 50 to 57 after the latest round of broad-based appointments. Others argue that the head of state, needs sharp minds around him who can advise on a plethora of issues. So, Mheshimiwa, how many is too many? Bearing in mind, too many cooks spoil the broth, and some of this advising roles overlap with the roles of cabinet secretaries. What's your take on this?
I think the first thing that we need to understand is that the president was very clear in what he said, that he needed to reduce the number of advisors in government by 50%. So, and I am aware that many of those advisors, some have left government, others were deployed into different offices to work, and that the addition of Professor Makau Mutua doesn't increase to over 50, to over half from what he said. I mean, when the Gen Z protested, many of the advisors that I know of about 12, that were serving, advising government attached to various offices, the office of the Deputy President, the office of the Head of Public Service, and even the offices of various cabinet secretaries. Majority of them are actually left, and the head of state has decided to consolidate the advisors to be around cabinet office, which is very critical and very important. And what Kenyans need to do is that they should not focus on the number of advisors that are advising the president, but they should focus on the output. What is it that these advisors are bringing on the table? We have very many sectors in our country, and these sectors have been complaining about lack of, the government hearing their views and their problems, and these very many advisors that we are talking about To me, they're not very many, but they just represent the various subsectors that we have in our country, and their role and their responsibility is to provide a linkage with those sectors. For example, economic advisors are supposed to work very closely with various financial services sectors, various players within the financial sector, the institutions that are key to improving our economy, and because the head of state is not available to meet with them on day-to-day basis, but these different advisors will kind of create a system that will be able to tap into the intelligence of these various sectors and bring it to the attention of the president. So I want to challenge those who are saying that the president has got so many advisors to wait for at least a year, then we can reevaluate the input, the benefits that these advisors will have brought on the table of our head of state and the head of government.
Yeah, that's good to note. But what do you tell those who opine that President William Ruto is perhaps awarding political cronies to the advisors' positions, especially after the court slammed the brakes on the CAS slots?
I think, I don't think that Kenyans are making noise. You know, it depends on which divide you belong to. What we are experiencing as a country here is something that is akin to, if you are a member of our subgroup, there are very many noises in our subgroup, and when maybe you take time to interrogate those who are making noises, those who are writing very many things, you'll realize that maybe they are out in our subgroup of about 500 people, maybe there are just 8 people who are just writing things repeatedly. So we live in a country where those that are loud, they are the loudest, and those that are silent are the majority, they are keeping quiet, and that we should focus on what the government of Kenya is delivering, as opposed to these side shows that cannot improve the life of the Kenyan people. You will agree with me that elections in our country comes after 5 years. And after 5 years, before 5 years, we have a government that is in place. And what we should focus on is how are we going to milk the juice from this government? How are we going to ensure that this government delivers on her manifesto? How are we going to ensure that this government has been given an enabling environment so that they can deliver? Because failure by government to deliver, we all suffer, and we cannot recover. So we have a duty as Kenyans that we must listen to the national anthem. Every stanza, we must begin to practice what this latter in the spirit of our national anthem, so that we can become patriot. Being patriot is, goes beyond just loving our country, to including loving our leaders, because we are those leaders. We are Kenyans are the one who elected us, and we will provide a platform upon which Kenyans can ventilate, where Kenyans can say, this is something that we feel the government has not done very well, and there is room for improvement. In government, in all governments in the whole world, there's a department that does monitoring and evaluation, where you collect feedback from the people that you are governing with a view of improving our governance system. And that is all that we are asking Kenyans, that they should give us time to complete on our manifesto. And by 2027, when time for campaign comes, we will roll up our sleeves. We will get to the streets. We will campaign. Of course, we will tell them what we have done, that will make us merit for a second term as government of Kenya Kwanza.
That's proper to note. But the Kenyans who are questioning the wage bill, the government spending, especially when it comes to some of these advices, why not get technocrats in cabinet? Because when you talk about the wage bill and cutting wastage of funds, a section of Kenyans might wonder why we should spend billions annually on advisors, yet some of these roles are encompassed in cabinet positions. You have an economic advisor, yet you have advisors at the Ministry of Treasury who might do the same role as those economic advisors. Talk to us about this. Is it a priority to cut the wage bill, really?
Like I've told you, if you look at our governance system from independence, the operations of government is funded by the exchequer. the exchequer is funded from the taxpayers. They are the Kenyans themselves who run our government by providing taxes upon which government now funds her operations. At the end of the day, the performance of our government will be judged on, not on the wage bill, but it will be judged on the deliverables that the government will have delivered at that point when Parliament of Kenya goes to synodine, paving way for the elections in our country. So from where I sit, it is not about the wage bill. The amount of money that these advisors are paid and their allowances is meager. Cannot even, it's a very small amount of money. You get my point? But we should look at what value are these advisors adding to our government.
R1 billion shillings is small money annually.
You know, you look at R1 billion shillings, and
yes.
I think, you know, you will appreciate that this team of advisors are the ones that have advised our government that you can actually get money to develop our roads without necessarily taking loan. You know, the way we have structured the money that the government of Kenya is getting, for example, the recent money that we got from China, which was basically a grant, it is a brainchild of the team that Kenyans are saying bloated or very many advisors. We should look at what are they bringing on the table. And I can tell you, if you look at R1 billion shillings which they are being paid, maybe which they are spending annually, vis-a-vis the amount of resources that these people are bringing in our country in the name of grant, the development partner that people are bringing, the sound policies that the government is implementing to be able to improve the life of the Kenyan people. Yeah.
Interesting. So from the clip we played a little bit earlier, Mheshimiwa, the president on July 5th highlighted that the budget for renovations across government have been reduced by 50%. But now today's headline on the Daily Nation indicates that Ruto's office will get 2.3 billion shillings, an increased cash allocation in the current budget, in the next year's budget, rather, next financial year budget. This is despite the austerity measures that were promised by the head of state. So questions will arise. Is it truly necessary? 2.3 billion for renovations to Ruto's office?
I don't know where you are getting these figures from, and I'm happy you have categorically and clearly said that you got them from some newspaper headline. If you look at the budget making process, the responsibility of deciding how much money goes for whatever reason they were tabled in Parliament. They will be processed before various departmental committees. Like where I sit, I am vice chair of a departmental committee on roads and transport. We have also the departmental committee on administration and national security, upon which the State House falls, the presidency falls. Kenyans should relax until Parliament of Kenya processes the final document which will then guide this discourse in terms of how much amount of money has been allocated on renovations or where. But as we speak today, those newspaper headlines about this amount of money on renovations, this amount of money on this and that, they remains newspaper headlines, they remains gossip, they remains you know, things that are not being verified, they are not official, they are not auctionable. Nobody can implement what appears there until, you will wait until the Parliament of Kenya generates a document out of Parliament during the Committee of Supply. The Committee of Supply is where, forget about the government speech, from what Kenyans treated to mean as budget. That's not budget. A budget is not what the Minister for Finance comes in Parliament to present. That is a budget speech. The budget is when we have now the appropriation bill tabled in the National Assembly, and we retreat to a committee on supply where we interrogate each and every figure, each and every shilling. We propose amendments, we move money from vote A to vote B, we delete whatever that the press is presented to the head of state to sign. That is what is called budget of the Republic of Kenya. Whatever the minister comes to read in the National Assembly, that is a budget speech that has got no bearing in law. It has got it cannot be implemented. It cannot be actioned. It's just a wish of government that this is what we feel we should do. But the final responsibility lies squarely with members of parliament. When a document is presented before them on a committee on supply through a motion, through a bill, where each and every member of parliament interrogate every shilling, every cent, word by word. Whatever comes out of it, of course, there are very many piecemeal proportionate amendments that happens during that time.
Okay.
So whatever will come out of that, out of that, and is taken to the head of state for signature, that is when now the government will have all the tools and the liberty now to begin spending that money.
Is presented to Parliament, but questions will definitely arise as to will Parliament go the same way as last year in terms of processing the finance bill and not listening to the voices of Kenyans when it comes to some of the tax measures that will be put in place in order to finance this budget. We definitely hope for a listening Parliament, one that will listen to the voices of the people and incorporate their suggestions and their reservations into this year's on the next financial year's budget. Allow me to appreciate the presence of Makueni Senator Dan Manzo. Better late than never. Karibu sana. Thank you for making time for us. Karibu to the studios.
My apologies to viewers.
No problem.
The call came a little bit late, but I'm here. I'm sure that has given a little bit of advantage to my friend.
Because I was aware that nowadays Nairobi has become so insecure to us members of parliament. Yeah. So he was just sorting out his security when he's well secure.
Okay. It's good to know you're both secure. Karibu sana Manzo. We're talking about some of the advices to President William Ruto, and we just referred to Kenya's Bold newspaper, The Standard, that highlighted the plethora of advices and how they're gobbling up to 1 billion shillings annually. So we were just conversing with Mheshimiwa right here, and he suggested that we give them time, this advice is time, until a point where we see their input and we can do a cost-benefit analysis of sorts to see what they are bringing onto the table and whatnot. But there are reservations into the numbers around President William Ruto in terms of his advices, because some of these functions are duplicated. Cabinet secretaries equally advise the head of state on a plethora of issues. So talk to us, Manzo, especially about the quality, quantity, and caliber of President William Ruto's plethora of advices. If you conduct that cost-benefit analysis, are we better off with the advices, bearing in mind the economic environment we're currently in as a country?
Well, first, I think there are too many and they are necessary. It's just another way of expanding cabinet and constitutionally. If you look, some of the advisors are qualified and others, are just scholars who may not have the reality of politics. So I think one of the biggest messes comes from the advisors. But I doubt whether anybody advises President Ruto, whether the cabinet or the advisors, because some of the decisions made instant, and you can see a lot of times they are not carefully thought or they may not have been advised before. One of the biggest advisors of government should be the Attorney General. Extremely important, because you see the legal regime around government hangs on him and his team or her in the Attorney General's office. So you can see a lot of gaps. And I think that's why the president has kept on changing advisors, kept on changing cabinet. Like Moses Kuria left cabinet, went to become an advisor. It looks like an afterthought to balance politics. And I think as much as times are very difficult in the country, the government is full of wastage. There's a lot of wastage in government. The touring around and promises made instantaneously that have bought for you this piece of land with what budget? Well, is it the president's office budget or is it the Minister of Land's budget? You know, all those things should have clarity. So there is a lot of lack of clarity in government. There is clear incompetence in government when the ministers and the permanent secretaries appear in Parliament. That's the time you see the mess. You saw what happened with the Minister of Labour today and the Senate and the Minister in charge of Labour, who has been a governor but has never been in National Assembly. In fact, people who have been elected in National Assembly or Senate make better ministers, like the Honourable Duale, anybody the Honourable Wamalwa when he was a minister, anybody who has been in Parliament has a very easy time managing the country, managing the people, dealing with issues in Parliament. So in my assessment, it's a total mess. Ordinarily, you will have consistency. In fact, President Kibaki never had advisors as such. Mudaura was enough. And he had experts who have grown within the government system. But in this government, you are plucky people from private sector, put them in government, they have no much idea. I can assure you, if Didimas was a minister, he would do a much better job than some of the characters we have seen become ministers. You saw what happened with our friend Ruko. He gets appointed as a minister, and in the afternoon, he goes to Central Police Station where he was once locked up, just to announce to them that I'm oversighting civil service. Of course, the police is independent. It's just a way of intimidation, and that's a wastage of time and fuel and belonging to the state. And I believe a future government can do better.
Okay.
This one, I don't see it rectifying anything, because everything is zing-zang, wrong. If you ask 10 out of, if you ask 10 people in Kenya, 7 of them will tell you will never vote this government back. So you can see it's doing 30%. It's really doing badly. Projects have stalled. If you see the road heading to Nyeri, it is stopped where the President Uhuru left it. I was there, a few days ago. I found very little work going on. Thwake Dam, Konza City, almost every other project which was running has stalled. But we can see we have a lot of money as a country, but there's a lot of wastage and misapplication of public money.
At this point in time, Dan Manzo was a member of Parliament. He ceased to be a member of the National Assembly by end of 2022. He became a senator. From 2022 to date, he has been busy interrogating documents and the plans of county governments in Kenya. The people who have appeared before him at the Senate are governors across the country, and they are CECs, because as you know, Senate is the father, is the custodian of devolution. And the people who are implementing devolution are the 47 counties. So he is not very competent in terms of understanding the value that the current advisors are getting to a government, because his focus is on, is a senior member of WIPA, his focus on WIPA politics, and also the county governments, the 47 county governments we have in our country. But on matters of interrogating the value of the advisors that are currently advising government, the person who is competent enough to give a honest opinion and view is me, Didmas Wekesa Barasa. Because number one, I'm a member of Parliament. I don't interrogate county government documents. Governors don't appear before me. But the people that appears before me are the ministers. I've just come in the morning. I was in State House, went there in my capacity as vice chair of the Roads Committee, just to understand the plan that the government is going to use to ensure that all our stalled roads are completed, and also how we are going to do all one of our major roads in our country without overburdening the Kenyans with the taxes. And I think Dan Manzo, you will agree with me that time has come where every leader who appears on TV, you must be able to give accurate information, information that will make Kenyans live with optimism and hope that there is something that is being doing. Because whether you are a member of parliament of an opposition party, you have a responsibility to shape the policy of our country. You have the responsibility to ensure that you use your energy, the resources that the Kenyans have given you, and the brains that you have that made the people to bring you to either the Senate or the National Assembly to the benefit of the whole Republic. I can say that without fear of contradiction, that the very many investors that we are getting in our country today, the development partners, the people who are giving us money, not in the form of loans, but in the form of grants in the agriculture sector, including some of the money that are going to the county governments, the devolution support programs, the funds from World Bank and everything. It is because of the system that the government of Kenya has put in place. And some of these brains, some of the people that are behind these brains are president advisors.
And advisors,
Absolutely. So let us give them a benefit of doubt that we can come back here after a year and see whether whatever is it that they are advising government on, we will want to see. Let us come here after 1 year and debate about the benefits that they are bringing on. You know they are not very many. They are just few. The amount of money we pay them, those are stipends. You cannot even do anything. They are Kenyans, like Dan Manso, you know. And if we begin, let me tell you, even political parties, they are given money. This money must go into doing something that is beneficial to the country. Even your party leader, the Wiper party leader, His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, he's paid some money as a retired vice president,
which has been slashed by
that money. That money that is given is also, we also begin to interrogate what is it that he's using this money for, you know, so that he can also use that money to the benefit of the country. You know, because we are aware, you know.
Tell me this, Mheshimiwa, because we've talked about, you know, the money given to political parties, whatnot, and some of these former leaders, including the former Vice President, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. We saw his budget will get a slash of, is it up to roughly 20 million Kenya shillings? It's not just him, of course, but if you put all that together, it barely scratches the surface. We're talking about 1 billion to advisors annually.
That is just a proposal. That is a proposal made to Parliament. As members of Parliament, we will interrogate that proposal, and the government must explain to us the rationale they used to slash that money. If we will not be persuaded, we will return the money. But my problem is, I support this money because I want the office of the former president, the office of the former deputy president, vice president, to also provide some kind of employment to the Kenyan people. But when you reach a time where you see even some of these people, even they employ their wives, they employ their children, you know, how can we employ you put your child on your own payroll, you know? So we are going to we will even begin to ask for a breakdown on how this money was spent.
Interesting. Allow us to take a short break.
So that when I'm also appropriating this money to the office of the former vice president, I am appropriating money knowing that this office will also provide employment for some 2 or 3 or 5 Kenyans who are, by virtue of, by deed of his former position, they are allowed to offer their services to him so that he can live a dignified life.
All right, we'll take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll be talking to Dan Manzo, just reflecting on his recent trip to Wamunyoro, because we definitely saw some opposition leaders converge in that particular area, all to do with unseating President William Ruto come 2027. Not just that, IEBC selection panel has given a report on the recruitment of commissioners to President William Ruto, who within law is supposed to forward the shortlisted names to Parliament for approval within 7 days. The Wiper Party has written a letter to the head of state asking to be involved in the process of shortlisting these candidates. We'll get to hear from Dan Mazo on those issues plus more. Do stay with us. You're watching KTN Prime.